Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Good Roads Podcast. I am Jared LeMay, along with Thomas Bearcat, and we are fresh off our first podcast in front of a live studio audience at the 2023 Good Roads Conference. But we're back behind the screens right now, right, Thomas?
That's right, Jared.
All right. I think it went well in person with everybody. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience having the live audience there. We couldn't re-record anything if we needed to, so having that that kind of weighing over us, I think actually made us a little bit better than normal. So I liked it. It was fun, and
we had to be on our mark and no editing.
And hopefully we can do it again next year. Maybe same topic, maybe something different. I don't know. We'll see. But it was definitely a unique experience, and I think we could definitely build on it for next year.
All right. Okay. Moving on to today's episode. Today's episode is going to be one that hits a little close to home for me as a parent. If you're at this year's Good Roads Conference, you'll recognize our guest from the Tuesday plenary session in the Canadian Room. And if you weren't at the conference, number one, what's the deal? Number two, this is an episode you're really going to want to pay attention to, whether or not you're a parent. Today's guest comes from us from the Let's Remember Adam campaign, and I'm not even going to begin to describe this, as there's no way I can do it any justice. Welcome to the Good Roads Podcast, Pierre Ranger.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. And yeah, thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it. And like I said, I can't even do justice to what this is. So to start things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the story behind the Let's Remember Adam campaign?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Pierre Ranger, and I'm the chair of the Let's Remember Adam Stop for the School Bus campaign. And I'm also one of Adam's brothers. I'm actually his oldest brother. So the campaign started due to the loss of Adam Ranger, who is shown here on our logo. On February 11, 2000, Adam was just 5 years old. He was doing something normal, something every student usually does, traveling home from school on a school bus. The school bus stopped outside our family home, red lights flashing, stop arm out. The weather that day was sunny. It was clear. It was dry. Adam started to cross the road, and somebody didn't stop for that school bus and struck and killed Adam at the end of our driveway. Obviously witnessed by the bus driver, school bus full of children, and our other brother, Alex, was only feet away from Adam when it happened. He actually reached out to try to grab Adam's backpack as he seen somebody wasn't going to stop, and he missed him. So needless to say, that tragedy destroyed our family, flipped our lives upside down, and it was something we'll never, ever really get over. But because of that, my mom wanted to see something good come out of this horrible tragedy. So with an idea she had after seeing a Mad Mothers Against Drunk Driving campaign where they had a picture of somebody that lost their life due to that, she thought we needed something similar to remind people why it was so important to stop for the school buses and what can be lost when the choice is made not to stop. So from that, the Let's Remember Adam campaign was born. And I became the chair of the campaign in 2014 and basically been running it since then. And our main goal is to make sure that no child gets injured or loss of life like Adam, because somebody either made the choice not to stop for that school bus or was distracted and didn't stop for that school bus. So we basically are a school bus safety campaign. We spread that message. We visit schools, school bus companies, and like the Good Roads Conference, which was by far the biggest event I've ever spoken at, which was amazing. We try to just remind people why, and we try to make real safety changes to school buses because at the end of the day, a school bus basically has been the same forever. There's not a lot of change to school buses, and for whatever reason, technology has evolved all around us, but that school bus has stayed the same. Right. So we're trying to bring some changes to them and make them safer, not only for the children on those buses, but the people around the bus, the driving public. And we're just hoping that we can never, ever have another loss of life like Adam.
That's wow, that's some pretty impactful stuff and like a lot to unpack. Like you said right there, this It's a choice not to stop for a school bus. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it with the flashing lights, the signs, the arms, everything.
Yeah.
There's no missing that. It is a choice, and it affects the most vulnerable of society in kids who may or may not know. I mean, when I was younger too, there was always those campaigns that look both ways before you cross the street,
Right.
don't run
Yeah.
out. But I mean, kids, like you said, Adam was 5,
Yeah.
6.
5. Yeah.
Kids don't know this. Kids forget this. Kids have other things on their mind. That ball went across. I want to get home. I want to play my game. They don't think about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's up to us, and it is a choice to make to pass that school bus. And like you said, it doesn't just affect Adam. It now affected your entire family. It affected the kids on that bus. It affected the bus driver. It affected that school. I can only imagine your brother reaching for, when you told this story at the conference, I felt for your brother who was reaching for the backpack,
Yeah.
because he's going to be reaching for that backpack for the rest of his life.
Yeah. He
And,
is.
and to be inches away, it's,
Yeah.
and
He's part of the
I'm,
he's part of the campaign. My brother, his name is Alex, but
Yeah.
he's not a major part by any means. It's only been in the last few years where he's been able to even like talk about it publicly, do minor interviews or whatnot. We have another brother, Brody. He was 1 year older than Adam. He was already at home at the time, and
Right.
Adam was his best friend. So it like when I tell people it destroyed my family, it literally destroyed it, and you're never
Yeah.
the same again. And not only my family, like the community. And when I was at the Good Roads conference, I actually met a mother who is a counselor in another municipality now that lived here at the time, and her daughter was actually on the bus that day and witnessed
Really?
the incident.
Wow.
Yeah, she came up to me after
Wow.
the speeches and introduced herself and said, my daughter was one of the children on that bus that day that you talked about. And I was blown away.
Wow.
It caught me totally off guard. I've never met, like, I know parents and children are my community, but I've never met somebody outside that said, yeah, my kid witnessed that, and thank you for doing what you do. And yeah, it was blew me away and caught me off guard. Normally I'm not caught off guard with this stuff because I've been doing it for a while, but that one caught me. So
So Pierre, let me ask you this. I think you might have mentioned this when you were telling the story, but when did this incident occur?
February 11th, 2000.
2000. So it's
Yeah.
been about 23 years now since
Yeah.
since that very tragic incident happened. So you've mentioned that your mom kind of got the ball rolling on this, and you've kind of stepped in since 2014 to be the chair of the campaign. What has changed? We said a lot of things haven't changed with school buses. What has changed in terms of the buses, but also everything kind of surrounding the buses? I know there has been some changes as of late,
Yep.
but why don't you kind of just walk us through where we were then versus where we are now?
Well, when the campaign first started, we basically came to the table with the idea of highway billboards, bumper stickers, and we honestly believe that just sharing Adam's face and saying that could be taken from you would be enough to get people to stop. Sadly, it wasn't. Even locally, our numbers of stop arm violations rose, and year to year they rose. And it just seemed like more people were either not paying attention, didn't have the time to stop. I always say putting their personal time ahead of a child's life, but that's what it seemed was happening. And the more I'd go out, especially once I started being a major part of the campaign, and talk to police that were right on the streets patrolling and charging these people, and listening to their stories, and talking to school bus drivers and listening to their stories. And it was clear to me that people were either not paying attention or just blatantly didn't care, because that school bus was a nuisance to them. So then we had to look at, well, what can we change? How do we change the school bus so people notice it more, stop more, or have no choice but to stop? Well, there's not much. A school bus is bright yellow and it already has flashing lights, so there's not much you could change. But
Yeah.
we did find out at first. Let's remember, Adam as a whole started working towards, well, years ago the government passed the stop arm camera legislation, but nothing was ever done with it. So I approached my local MPP, Vic Fideli, with questions on why has nothing been done with it. Can you look into it? Is there something we can do to get this ball rolling? Because we need make these changes. He looked into it, and from there, the legislation was finished and the regulations were written. And now that program's out there, and stop arm cameras can be used on school buses. The MTO has written regulations for this. Mattawa still is the only community in Ontario that I know of that has a stop arm camera safety program. There is other municipalities running stop arm cameras on their buses, but most of them look after them themselves. The way the Mattawa system works is they've signed up with a camera company to run that system for them. Now, there still needs to be adjustments to the regulations, the way they wrote them, because the regulations don't give third-party tech companies access to the license plate registry, which anybody that owns a parking lot, a hotel, has access to these license plate registries. But because the word tech company is not in there, tech companies like this stop arm camera company can't have access to the registry. Without that, they can't auto find people that go through. So they're in works right now with the MTO and the government to have these regulations adjusted, not changed, just adjusted. And then once that happens, it'll be a lot easier for these systems to work. The way the systems work now in Mattawa is when there's an incident, the bus driver reports it, dispatch calls it into the police get the footage and use that to find the driver. They still do it the same way, but the way the program's supposed to work is the police are out of it altogether. It's an auto finding system, very similar to radar cameras and red light cameras, where the fines will happen and the bus camera company is running that system and finding people on the municipality's behalf. It's an agreement between the municipality and the camera company, and that's why the regulations say the municipality has to make that decision to put those cameras on, not the school bus company, not the consortiums, but it has to be the municipality because they're agreeing to work with the camera company. And also the way the Mattawa program will work is a percentage off every stop arm camera fine goes back to the camera company to pay for these cameras. So Mattawa dished out no money at all to put all these cameras on these buses. And at that time, I was told one camera system on these buses is worth about $10,000. Now, these are 360-degree cameras with full GPS and tracking. It tracks if that bus brakes too hard, if it turns too quick. So not only do you have all the safety features of that catching people breaking the law, but you also have a whole bunch of information that general managers and owners of bus companies can use to better train their drivers, because they'll know specifically which drivers have quirks where they brake too fast or they accelerate too fast or they turn too quick. And especially in a market now where it's so hard to find people that want to come out and work, especially a part-time job like that, these systems will help because you can specifically train drivers on the areas they need improvement, which I've tried to tell municipalities, it's not only a safety system to catch people, but it will improve the overall bus driver, bus company situation. So we're working towards that.
So Pierre, a question for you. I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. So you mentioned that Mattawa has their own program that they kind of directly contracted with a technology company. What I've kind of been hearing and seeing in the work that I've been doing on this issue was that a lot of municipalities want to do it, but there's no processing capacity in the processing centers. So they could, they can install the bus arm camera and they can get the images and whatnot, but it's actually the processing part of it, almost like you mentioned with like red light cameras and photo radar. They don't have the capacity to kind of include these types of violations at the existing processing centers. So I know, for example, Ottawa has their own. They just built they have one just specifically for this. I think Toronto has a joint processing center for all the municipalities for red light cameras and automated speed enforcement, but they've said that they don't have the capacity to run this through it as well. So I guess what I'm wondering is how did Mattawa, does Mattawa set up their own processing center, or because I don't think I remember reading about that, and it might just be something I never saw.
No, Mattawa doesn't have the capacity to have its own processing center by any means, and most municipalities don't. Plus, most municipalities you're not paying anything for the camera systems. You don't want to have to hire employees and have that into your annual budgets. So the way the system works in the US, where these cameras are on like 40,000 buses in the US, the way the system works there per state is there's processing centers from the camera company that the camera company runs. They pay the employees, they run the processing center, and then the percentage that comes off the fines goes back to them to cover all these costs. So what I've heard is that Peel Region is supposed to have a processing center eventually that's part of this camera company program. Therefore, once the cameras work the way they should in Mattawa, Peel Region's processing center would process that information, and it would all be under the camera company banner. But they would run it, and it would be you're signing up to run. Part of the package is you sign up to have that processing center. Other places could open a processing center, like other large municipalities, like even the closest one to me is North Bay. North Bay could open a processing center and pull in all the information from the north, all the way, Thunder Bay, Timmins, Sudbury. They could process all those tickets. The other thing I hear from municipal leaders is, yeah, but we don't got a lot of stop arm violations. No, you don't, because the bus drivers aren't reporting them. Like if 10 cars go through that stop arm, that bus driver might get the first one if you're lucky, or get none. And bus drivers get frustrated by not being able to get the information, or when they do report it, people just fight these tickets. So they have to go and take time off work, go to court, listen to the judge, throw the fine out or reduce it to ridiculous amounts. So they get frustrated. So when we try to talk... Yeah, go ahead.
That's even if the cops do anything about it. I mean,
exactly.
As a parent with small kids, like my youngest is 6 years old, and my wife and I have sat at the corner and watched people zip right by our bus stop. They almost nailed a little girl crossing the street once.
Yeah.
My wife took pictures, took videos, sent it to the police, and they're like, they came up with all these excuses. Well, we can't find them because of this. We can't find them because of that. We can't do this. We can't do that. Nothing ever happened to it. It's not the first time it's happened. And like you said, like the bus drivers, like I got one, but 3 more went after, like right after them. And they've got to keep so much information. Like they got to take down license plates, car type, time of day, intersection, this, that, and the other. And you're trying to do all that while you've got kids screaming behind you. You've got a route you've got to stay on. And you're trying to do that for 10 cars zipping by you.
Yeah, you can't. And their number one priority is the safety of those children. And a lot of bus drivers will tell you, when the kids that ride their bus every day, they feel that those kids are their kids. That's their responsibility for that 20 to an hour time those kids are on the bus. It's their responsibility. And a lot of bus drivers, if not all, take that responsibility very hard. And that's the bus drivers I talk to that watch cars go by or watch kids almost get hit, like, they're shaken. It's like their own child. Like, for example, the bus driver that drove the bus for Adam that day has never driven a bus again in his life.
I don't blame him.
He quit that day. He still lives in Mattawa. He has other jobs. We see him often, but he has never driven a bus again because you can't after something like that.
Yeah, that's tragic.
Yeah, to get back on topic, it sounds like the biggest hang up right now is processing, like Thomas said, finding centers. And these technology companies are willing to process. It's just because of the way their legislation's written.
Correct. From what I'm hearing, correct. Yeah, because of that, they can't access the license plate registry. And without that, none of this system works as it should. Municipalities can still... Yeah, apparently from the last information I received, which was just before Good Roads, is that the camera company and the MTO are in conversation to try to resolve this. I think the hang up is once the MTO allows permission for a tech company to have access, it's almost like automated policing. And I think that's what the wording or the hang up is for the MTO to go that route. But the way the world's working, like there's cameras on everything.
Yeah.
Look at the Good Roads. The gentleman that spoke right after me with the highway barriers from Italy and stuff like that. All those have cameras on them. Like they capture everything. I have people tell me that all the time. Your cameras on school buses are there just to capture children. There's been cameras on school buses filming kids for years on the
Well, the
inside of the
interior
school bus.
ones
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's people locally here that's told me I don't want my kid filmed. Well, I'm sorry, but your kid's been filmed for years without you knowing because there's a camera on inside of that bus.
And even if
Like,
you don't want to talk public cameras, like you look at Ring doorbells,
oh,
security cameras, they're cheap. They're everywhere.
yeah.
Private cameras are everywhere.
I don't think there's a house on my street that doesn't have cameras. My house is on camera
Yeah.
360. Like it's everywhere. Where I work, there's cameras. That's the way the world's going. And that privacy thing is almost right out the window. And these cameras only film, just so that can get out there too. They only film and record. So it's an AI technology that runs the recording system. So once the stop arm comes out, the camera starts to record so many seconds before. Records everywhere. If there is no incident, if nobody goes by that stop arm and the camera or any of the cameras, and the camera doesn't pick up on anything, nothing's recorded. What
Pierre,
was recorded is deleted.
So is that? I was going to ask you this earlier, but we kind of moved on a little bit. But does the bus driver have to do anything, or does it just automatically, if it captures something go by, it saves it like on the cloud or something?
Yep, saves it up in the cloud. The bus driver doesn't have to do anything. And when the systems work properly, it saves it on the cloud. It sends a notification to the processing center that there was an incident. It sends the recording. They ticket that license plate number, the owner of that license plate. That person receives a ticket. At that time, if that owner says, no, that wasn't me, I didn't do that, they can try to fight the ticket. At that time, the camera company will send them through email the video evidence of the incident that they can review. And in the States, from what I'm hearing, is 3% of all tickets get contested and 1% actually get given back. So that
so what's
numbers,
a fine like this then? What's a fine like this for passing those right now? Is it like
$450?
I'm gonna go on a little. How much? Sorry,
$450.
And I guess that's for the first offense, and I assume
First
it goes
offense.
up.
Yeah, it can go up to 4,000. But and the way this camera system would work is if the camera system can lay a charge at 450, and if a police officer was to witness the incident, they can also lay a separate charge because it's two separate things. So right now in Mattawa, it doesn't work that way. The OPP are laying the charges, but when the system, like in the US, that's how it works. If a police officer witnesses it, they can lay two charges.
I'm 100% okay with that too, because like we said at the top of I guess it's the parent in me talking, but like we said at the top of this episode, number one, these are the most vulnerable people in our society. Number two, it's a choice. It's not like whoops, I didn't see the school bus. The biggest thing on the road, it's bright yellow. There are lights, there are signs. This is a choice, and you chose wrong. Because at the end of the day, that's a life you could be ending.
My mom has a quote out there, and that's what she says. Every time that bus stops, there's a pedestrian getting on or off, and not just a pedestrian, but a child's life. And every time, if it's stopping on the roadway and that arm comes out, that's what's happening. Now, they might not be crossing the road, but for you to know that, that's not a decision you should be making. You should just be, you wouldn't run a red light if there was nobody at the intersection because there might be a camera there to catch you.
Exactly.
Well, and that's what the red light cameras are for too, because people were running red lights because, I don't see somebody.
Exactly.
And yeah.
And the other changes that we've made that are actually done, and we're not working on them anymore. So the cameras are something we're still working on. We're still trying to get municipalities to look at it as far as the whole Good Roads presentation. And we're still getting information from the camera company to stay up to date. But what we were able to do is in 2019, I was working before the COVID shut everything down. I was working with a school bus safety organization, and that organization consisted of local school bus general managers, the OPP, North Bay City Police, the health unit, and the MTO. There was a representative from the MTO on that committee. And what we did was we joined once a month with basically brainstorming on how we could make buses safer. And what we found out during one of the very first meetings is that Ontario was the only province that didn't run amber lights on the top of their school buses. And not only the only province, but the only place in North America that didn't run amber lights on top of their school buses. So we started to look at, well, how can we make this change? How can we get this done? Because this seems pretty simple. Then through some discussions with the bus companies that were with us, they were told years ago that this was coming. This change was coming. Amber lights would be added. Some of them had already purchased all the amber lights, all the lenses, because most of the time it's just a lens that changes. So they had purchased them all, waiting, but the change never happened.
Wow.
So what we did is we reached out to local government officials and tried to find out what do we need to give you so you can push this through. And basically it comes down to, like anything with the government, they need public demand. The public has to want this. So we started a petition in the Mattawa, North Bay area, and we got thousands of signatures over the period of a month that we were able to give to our local MPP here. I presented it, MPP Vic Fideli, and he gave it to Mike Harris Jr., MPP Mike Harris Jr. of the Waterloo region. And Mike Harris was able to present that in government. And with all that, he was able to get the legislation changed to add the amber. It's called red amber 8 lamp safety system. He had that added. And that was on Bill 246, the Safer School Bus Act. He had that added. And as of September 2022, all school buses have to have amber lights on them. Now, there is still a few that don't, but that's because they're coming out of circulation this year. So if you're in the community and you say, hey, that bus doesn't have amber lights, that's because this is the last year for that bus. And then it's out. And we're talking very, very few. There's none in my area. We had the discussions. Everybody pulled their buses out of circulation. But in case somebody hears this and says, well, that bus has red lights at the top still, that's why, because it's coming out of circulation. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say so. I actually presented when this was still going through the legislative process. I presented a report on this to our board, and I remember one of the concerns that was raised was, well, isn't that going to confuse people because it's like yellow and then red? And I don't know, maybe just because of the way I presented it, which that very much could be the case. But I was essentially saying, no, I don't think so, because it's almost like when you're driving, yellow means you can keep going through, and then when it gets red, it's like, no, you stop.
Yep.
And then I think now, since it's been rolled out, and I think there was some public education campaigns around it kind of leading up to the school year this year, I think most people are saying, oh no, this actually is a lot clearer now, and it's going to make our buses and our children a lot safer.
Yeah, before there was, from what I heard personally, and through Let's Remember Adam, there was a lot of confusion because on the back of that bus, it said, stop when red lights flashing. Red lights flash all the time. The warning lights are red lights. The stop lights are red lights. So we even had some police officers that weren't 100% sure what was a fine and what wasn't. So basically it came down to, as long as that bus was moving, you could pass that bus legally with the red lights flashing. But that's not what the sticker said at the back. Once the bus became to a stop, you had to stop. So by adding those amber lights, it does exactly like a traffic light, just as you mentioned. The amber light comes on. If you can safely pass that bus, you can. If you have time, go. Once that red light comes on, no more passing. Everybody stops. And yes, I have heard that this has changed people for the better. I have, where I work for my career, I have people that I work with that travel a lot throughout Ontario, and they say they love it. It gives a warning now for them. They're not so scared when they see that bus because they have an understanding of what that bus is going to do. And that was the goal. And here where I live in Mattawa, we're right on the Quebec border. We have a major highway that runs right through the town. So we had a lot of out-of-province incidents of stop arm violations where I honestly believe people didn't know what that bus was doing. They just seen lights all over, but it was still moving, and then they went to pass it, and then it stopped, and they had no idea. But when it came down to it, we just had to bring up to match everybody else. Everybody else was using them. And yes, there is concerns that people will see the amber lights and gun it like they do at a red light. They gun it, speed up, swerve around that bus. But again, that's not the bus's fault or the driver, or that's the person behind that vehicle that's choosing to make those decisions. Same as if they sped up to get through that yellow light. You're not supposed to do that. If you can safely go through, you go through, but you can't fix these drivers. And I honestly believe that driving, when I got my license, driving was a privilege. You had to learn it. You had to earn it. Now it seems like it's a right. Well, I get to drive.
Oh God.
Like you need to follow these rules. Like that's why they're here. They're not here to ruin your day. They're here to make it safer.
You're opening a can of worms here.
I have talked about this on numerous occasions.
Yeah,
right?
I have this long rant about driving in Ontario being.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous now because if you think about it, you literally need no training to drive a vehicle. And this is like a 2,000-pound death machine.
Yeah.
You can do your G1, which is just a written test. You can wait, do your G2. You get lucky, you pass it. You pass your G, you get lucky. No training whatsoever. And what's even worse about that is for your G2, you have to be driving with a licensed driver who could be giving you like the worst information ever. You don't have to take young drivers. You don't have to take driver training. I honestly think the driving test in Ontario should be infinitely harder than it is now because you're going to get a lot of people off the road who shouldn't be on the road, and B, it'll force the government to invest more in public transit, which we direly need right now. And C, we have a very popular Canadian television show that has had 13 successful seasons, possibly more, called Canada's Worst Driver. If that does not tell you that the driving test is too easy, I don't know what does. So rant over, but
Another thing I'll add on that, Jared, is especially with younger drivers and people getting their licenses. I actually just found out the other day that in Australia, they actually have, and I'm not sure if this is just for one particular state or province in Australia, but I know they actually have like a museum, like an exhibit just for like road safety related things that all students have to go visit when they're going through school before they go get their license, and they can they're exposed to like the dangers of the road and why it's important to have to be a safe driver, and all these sorts of things. Which I know there are some education campaigns here in Ontario and in Canada more generally. I know there are, but I just thought that was very interesting. Apparently, the government there put $50 million into this like museum exhibit, and there's all sorts of interesting things. Like they have like VR headsets where people can go get behind a wheel before they even ever get behind a wheel, and kind of experience unsafe driving and whatnot. Yeah. So not saying that that's the exact approach we should mimic, but I just thought it was very interesting that you say that it's too easy to get your license, but at the same time, well, what else can we do? How can we make it safer? How can we instill that mindset of safer driving into the drivers of the future? And that's just one way to do that.
Yeah. Right. And from where we come from as a school bus safety campaign, if you've ever read the Ontario Driver's Handbook, there's a blurb about this big about school buses. That's it. There's nothing. Wow. It's like stop so many feet, blah, 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 blah. It's not huge. So one of the things we are working towards is getting in those young driver training centers, especially locally here. Basically anywhere I try to get somebody in to tell them our story, to tell them Adam's story, and to get these young drivers to understand that you need to pay attention to these school buses. This is important. And I don't know if it's just because school buses have been on the road for so many years and people are used to seeing them, but I find there's no sense of urgency a lot, or people don't realize that this is an actual problem. Just because you and everybody stop for that school bus doesn't mean everybody stops. There's a large majority of the population that don't stop for some reason. And like I said earlier, I've talked to police drivers or police officers that have witnessed people not stop for the bus and went up and asked them. And they have met people that actually never say they never seen that bus. I didn't even notice that bus was there because it's their normal routine to travel that road that day. And they left 10 minutes later than normal and that bus was there. Where their normal routine, that bus is never there. So basically they're in a zone driving along to work and they never even noticed that bus there. Like they still got charged and they still could have killed a child, but they say they never seen the bus, which is shocking to me because it's a giant yellow bus. And I know when I was a kid and like a young driver, when I first started driving, if I seen a police car, I turned my stereo down, even if my stereo wasn't up, because I
Yeah.
was scared that I didn't want to draw. Yeah, I'm not drawing any attention to myself. I want people to feel that way about school buses. You see a school bus, oh, I got to pay full attention to what's going on around me, around that bus, everything. I'm stopping what I'm doing. I'm putting my phone down and pay attention. Which right now,
your phone in your hand in the first place, Pierre.
Oh, I know. I don't. Cars now, that's what I mean. Technology's come way up. When I'm on the roads and I see somebody driving like this in a brand new car, you couldn't figure out the Bluetooth? Like, this is simple. It's a click, click, you're done. I don't get it. But I come from a different background.
If you want to look at it in a selfish sense as well, like these people who go around the school buses, you may be saving your 10 seconds there, but what if you were to kill a kid? What would that do to the rest of your life? And I say this too. I say this too because when I got back from the conference, I mentioned specifically to my wife about your presentation, because in 1964, her uncle, who was 6 years old at the time, was killed in the exact same way as Adam was on Highway 7 in Port Perry. And like that really affected her family as well. And it hit home with her. And when I told her we were doing this podcast with you today, she did a little bit more research and found out it was Highway 7. It was 1964. She's got a picture of his tombstone, 1964 to 1972, I believe, something like that. And people may think this doesn't affect it. People think I'd never do that. I'd never do that.
Yeah, or it would never. It never happened to me or my, my kids.
Well, I can tell you the day Adam was killed, I was working we lived just outside of Mattawa when the incident happened, and I was working in the town of Mattawa at a local grocery store. My dad was the store manager. The day he was killed, my dad got the phone call from my mom saying Adam was struck. My dad left immediately and just told me Adam just got hit by a car crossing the road. I honestly believed that, Adam will be fine. Probably just clipped them. They're like, nothing bad ever happens like that. Yeah. The ambulance at that time, the hospital was on the other side of town, and the ambulance had to go right by the business. The ambulance went by, and that's when I got worried. I thought, maybe he's not okay. And then I got a ride with somebody down to the scene, and a police officer stopped me, hit me in my chest, and I'll never forget that feeling as I was walking up to the scene. And I tried to explain to him who I was, and then my dad told the officer who I was. And my brother was there on the road, covered up with the school bus driver's jacket. And those are images you never seen. And it wasn't until that point that I realized, oh, wow, something bad really happened to us. And now it's very easy to believe that something bad really happens. And everybody sees this little face and looks at him as a boy. But we've been doing this since 2004 is when the campaign started. Adam would be 20. He'd be 28 years old right now. He'd be a full-grown man. But we still have to do this. We still have to. Yeah, we don't have to, I guess. But I feel I have no choice. And so does my family and the board of directors we have now for the Adam campaign, who are all very passionate about this. We just feel that we have to do this, because if another child was to lose their life because somebody didn't stop, that would be horrible. And I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, it's really good and I'm glad to hear that you guys are still doing this. I mean, not glad to hear, hopefully, if there's no issue, we wouldn't have to do it, but I'm glad to hear you're still going out there trying to make that change. It's nice to see that, there's people in the community who are very much driven by trying to stop these tragedies from happening again, because it's really, it's so preventable. And all it takes is that, some change to happen, some education to happen, some changes to some laws, and hopefully we can kind of, stop this from happening, again. And I think for us as an organization, we've been advocating for Vision Zero for the past, 5-6 years now. And, this is part of it. Enforcement is part of Vision Zero. Education is part of Vision Zero. And then there's also engineering and all that sort of stuff. So, this is why we have to kind of keep pushing forward and hearing these stories. Sometimes it's easy to say, oh, I want a safer road because it's I don't want people to die anymore. But when you hear a story, it becomes very personal, and it becomes a lot easier to relate to it. So, I do, want to thank you for continuing to go out there and being brave to talk about it,
Right.
because it's not always easy to do that.
No.
At our conference, that was the first honest to God standing ovation that I had ever seen at our conference in the 10 years that I've been working at Good Roads. I've never seen that. You really touched a lot of people with your story, Pierre. And I had people come up to me afterwards and say, "Well, Thomas, you should have warned me that this was he was going to talk about that. I was going to start crying, and I was going to be on stage like right after type thing." And a lot of moms came up to me after and said, this is really, I really felt this like in my heart. So I'm like, keep it up, keep doing what you're doing, and keep fighting, because I think change is on the verge of happening. I have heard actually since our conference that the MTO is working with, I think, AMO and their LAS organization to develop a processing center specifically for these types of violations. So they're hearing the people like you and the people that you've touched and who are speaking out as well. They're hearing their voices, and I think they know that they have to act on this. And MTO, they want to stop these tragedies as well, and so do a lot of other stakeholders. So keep on pushing, and we are looking to keep helping you and this move forward in any way that we can. So
I appreciate it.
And just to add on to what Thomas said, as a parent, it's very, very easy for me to put myself in your position. I can empathize, not what you've gone through. I would never, ever wish that on my worst enemy, but to just envision my child laying on the ground there, it's heartbreaking. And I can't even imagine what you went through. So yes, thank you so much for sharing all this information with us, and all the other parents out there. I know they can empathize just as much. And for the people who aren't parents, just if you want to take it as through the selfish lens, imagine having that death on your hands of a child.
And that's not just the thing, right? It's the loss for us, but there was somebody else that ruined their life because they didn't stop. And this happens every day. Like, the statistics we get are mind-blowing. For a while, in the city of Thunder Bay, Ontario, there was 9 incidents, an average of 9 incidents per shift. So in the morning, an average of 9 people chose not to stop for that bus. And in the afternoon, another 9 people decided not to stop for those buses. That was an average per day over a 7-period day. A 7-day day.
People really want to roll that dice, like, seriously.
Well, and then we had one incident here in Mattawa where somebody didn't stop for a bus, but then pulled in at the Tim Hortons to get a coffee. So you chose not to stop for a school bus because you were in a hurry. What? You had time to go get a coffee. What is wrong with your process? Your priorities are like extremely wrong. But
before my blood gets boiling, sorry, go ahead.
But and like the way we spread the message, just so what people that aren't sure about Let's Remember Adam, is we do the highway billboards. We have them locally in the Mattawa North Bay area. We have bumper stickers that we can ship them worldwide. We have shipped them quite often. People requesting them and stuff like that. We're working on programs to make that easier for us, because we're still a very small grassroots campaign. We only recently got a board of directors. We're in the works applying to be an official non-profit organization recognized by the government. We won't be a charity because it just doesn't suit what we're trying to do. And it doesn't apply to our budget because there's a lot of fees with charities that we don't make that much money. We do fundraise. We have our social media is about our biggest way to spread the message, our website. We're getting into hockey arena boards because a few years ago, I realized that these hockey arenas are filled with parents all winter that just sit there, watch their kid, then between games sit there, and there's all these advertisements around the arena that they're just sitting staring at. So we got some boards locally here. Locally in Mattawa, we've had a board since the beginning, but in North Bay, we're moving in, and a few other arenas were on the waiting list. So we're working with that. We also have a big event coming up. We run a charity washer tournament, it's called. So it's an outside game You throw washers into holes, basically. We've done this 4 times now. It's a big game in this area. A lot of people like to play it. So we have boards we built for this tournament. We're running it June 24th here in Mattawa. With that tournament last year, just so you can get an idea how much it's grown. Previous years, we've had 32 teams of 2. You need 2 players to play this game. 32 teams of 2. This year, currently, as of today, we have 48 teams of 2 registered to play. I don't know how I'm going to pull it off because that's a lot of people. But my board kept saying, no, add more. Sky's the limit. So we're going full bore on this one. But we also run a prize lot raffle, we call it. So we collect donations from different businesses and companies pretty much anywhere, prize donations. And then we put them together in prize lots and people come in and buy tickets. And we were extremely successful. Last year, we had the players, the whole community of Mattawa, people messaging us to buy tickets like through e-transfer and stuff like that. So it was very successful. So we're doing that again, too. This is about our major fundraiser. We used to do a golf tournament as well. That's still in the works, possibly in the future. But the COVID thing had shut down. Our local course here stopped running tournaments because of COVID, and they haven't fully got back into it yet. So we're working on that. But this is about our major fundraiser. And then like Good Roads was by far the most amazing experience I've ever had personally, to be given that opportunity to speak in front of all those people. And like you said, there was people that came up to you, Thomas, and said, you should have warned me. I know the gentleman that helps with the campaign a lot. He's East Ferris. You guys know him, Rick Champagne. He would go up to people after to try to get them to come talk to me because he wanted me to meet them. And there was people that literally told him, no offense, but I can't speak to him. I'll start to cry. And that's hard for me because I'm like, I don't want you to cry. Like, I'm not here to make you sad. I'm just here to make you understand. And those people understand automatic. So those aren't the people I need to force my message through. It's the people that don't understand and don't see there's a problem.
Right.
Well, my wife, when I told her about this, she's like, you should probably put a trigger warning on this podcast. Yeah. I'm like, no, this is something people need to hear. And if it's going to be a hard truth, they're going to avoid it.
Yeah. And like, people might hear me talk about it and wonder how I can do it. And honestly, I have no idea. When I started in 2014, I started because I went out ahead of time before I was a major part of the campaign. I went out and I spread a message because my youngest daughter was about to start school and she was going to take that school bus, and it terrified me. So I went out to local radio stations in the area, wrote them messages. They had me on their shows. I spoke. I did an ad. I did all that on my own. Then the people at that time that were Let's Remember Adam, the people running the campaign, reached out to me and said, the campaign is not got stale, but we've ran it since 10 years. Would you like to put new blood in and take it over? So at that point, I said there to myself, there's no other option. This is me. My mom always says I'm Adam's voice. I just open my mouth and he speaks out of it. And maybe that's how I can do it and how I can talk about it. But like I said, something good has to come from this tragedy. And if no other child is ever lost because of it, then we did our job. So that's what we try to do.
You're doing a good job. You're making the world safer for our most vulnerable citizens. And I think that's a fantastic set of words to end on. You are Adam's voice. I like that. Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up for now. A lot of great information. Thank you so much for being with us, Pierre. If you want to learn more about the Let's Remember Adam campaign or want to get involved or anything like that, contact Pierre at www.letsrememberadam.org or email at info@letsrememberadam.org. And as always, I'll leave this information in the show notes and on the YouTube description. But for now, we're going to wrap up that episode.
Yeah,
and
Jared, one more thing I would just add. Check out the latest issue of GRQ, which should be coming out soon. Pierre had also authored an article in there with some more information as well. So yeah, be sure to read that. Definitely.
Maybe I'll put a PDF of just that specific article online so people can get access to that a little bit more broadly. Yeah, so we'll wrap it up for now. Once again, Pierre, thank you for joining us. As always, be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram for up-to-date information on everything happening at Good Roads, including this. If you're watching this on YouTube, give the video a thumbs up, definitely share this. This is something a lot of people need to hear. It's not just the podcast that goes up here too. We offer tons of great content to help you run your municipality as efficiently as possible. Leave a comment. We love to hear your feedback. If you have a question for Pierre, leave a comment in the YouTube video, or send us an email at podcast@goodroads.ca, and we'll definitely get it to him. And until next time, everybody, stay safe out there.